Hi, my name is Angela, and in this video I'm going to be talking about research poster presenting or presentations kind of 101. I'm currently a PGY1 pharmacy resident, and I'm doing this YouTube channel to cover a variety of topics related to pharmacy school and also residency. My last video was about research in pharmacy kind of in general, so I wanted to discuss specifically poster presentations because I feel like it was also an area I wasn't familiar with. And while you really can learn a lot of what you need to know from others who have done it or kind of that are involved in it with you, I thought I'd do a video just kind of overviewing my advice and experience. So when will you do a poster? Probably if you're involved in research. As a student in pharmacy school, it's a really good starter to academic scholarship or like writing, publishing, that kind of thing. So it's really a good first step. It's really kind of, as I talk about, it's going to be about developing an abstract, and then your abstract is kind of expanded into a poster and you have kind of images and things like that. So it's a really good starter for that kind of process within research, publishing, and presentations. In my case, I did student posters, local and state, or I should say local and the national, or kind of like more organizational that are across the nation. One was for research and also one was for a student organization. And so the other was more for academics. So I've done 3 different posters that I've kind of made. And so I bring in the student organization piece because it's not research per se, but it's still kind of like poster building and poster presentation. Often, or most often, you're going to be doing it on a research project. So what's included in the poster? Just to talk about kind of the words or the text portion. Like I said, it's an extension of an abstract. And then you have different applications of like figures, tables, pictures to kind of enhance what you're presenting. But an abstract is really a short summary of your research, and it describes your work in whole without going into too much detail. So it should be concise, brief, but yet very clear, and sum up what you're saying. So the kind of how your poster will be laid out, it'll start with the background of the purpose, why are we studying this? What's the context of what we're studying, or what's a good reason that why we should be asking this question, and then what your question is, what your research question is. Then you go into your methods. So how are we going to study it? What are we going to use to gather the data, the methods portion, and then you'll discuss your results. So what did you gather? What was your analysis, and what did you see? What were your findings? And then you can have a conclusion and or discussion area. This is the conclusion, and then how do we apply that to what we're doing currently in clinical practice or whatever area that you're in, and kind of what maybe further areas of study that you think are appropriate or that you came to awareness of when you came to your conclusion. So that's kind of a basic abstract layout, and that's involved in a lot of different areas of research, but it's kind of how the poster's laid out. So you'll have, of course, the title, the authors, whatever affiliation they're with, and then also maybe at the end you'll have acknowledgements or funding on your poster. I had that on both of mine. So that's kind of the text portion that you'll be summing up and laying out. But then, of course, it is most often appropriate to have at least one visual or image type figure to help supplement your poster so that it looks interesting and also provides a visual for your data and for what you're studying. So personally, I just don't like to read. I like when there's images, and most people want also an image so they can quickly sum up and see what you're talking about. It just helps enhance your presentation and your poster. So you should have at least one, in my opinion, but some people have several. They can be tough depending on what you want to convey. So just try to keep it simple. Make sure you have data points so they know what you're actually presenting on your poster, and make sure they're correct, a key and everything like that. So this is kind of just even standard figure comments. I shouldn't really go into too much detail, but that's something else to think about for a poster. And in terms of other things to think about, the layout of it you can Google different posters and see it pretty easily. My university had free templates for us to use and have their logo on it, so that was really nice because I think it looked pretty professional and it was personalized to the institution I came from. Otherwise, you can ask past students, past preceptors even. If you Google, there will be some free templates as well. Just find what you like and what works for you. While you want to dress up your poster and make it really appealing, remember the main goal is to get across the information. So it's really not there for looks. Mostly it's there to be clearly viewed and summed up, so keep that in mind. Don't make things too flashy that just distracts from what you're trying to do. And a tip I would give is something I thought was really helpful. I read it aloud. I read my text out loud and noticed what problems I had with it or what areas sounded weird. So that could be with anything, but especially with posters, you may find in, times of when you're presenting it verbally that you kind of forget what you're saying, so you might actually read from it, which would not be the best thing to do, but hey, it's better than just stop talking. So that just helps you ahead of time know if you are writing your sentences in a way that it flows well, you have any grammar mistakes, things like that. And I would have someone else read it. That also was something that helped me on my posters. I actually was about to present the next day, but the day before, one of my preceptors read it and had a lot of revisions that were really helpful. So have someone else read it so that they can, tell you if they came to the same conclusions and it flowed well, or they can give you feedback and ways to improve. So that's kind of building your poster, editing it, making it all flow. When you're actually presenting and you're at a poster presentation session, again, I would really try not to read straight off your poster, similar to like not reading straight off your slides. People can read slides, and also they're really looking for you to be that educator of whatever you're presenting, and you're just going to want to be more dynamic than just reading off of your poster, and also tailoring it to the specific person you're interacting with depending on their background knowledge or kind of their level of education. So basically, someone who hears you present should be able to get the gist of what you're saying without reading off of your poster. But then if you are gone for your poster for whatever reason, they should be able to read it and get the gist as well. So it should flow and line up. But remember that, presenting is I feel like more of a conversation, guide the viewer, and you can refer back to mainly the figures if you want to do that and refer back to the poster. That's something that can make it really flow well, and you're working with your poster without specifically only working off of your poster. I think that generally it should take no more than like 15 minutes to do a formal presentation. 5 minutes if you're like doing a quick, just elevator speech type of presentation. Someone just says, hey, what's going on with this research? Can you just tell me quickly about it? I don't have much time. Shoot for a 5-minute overview. And if you are formally presenting, you absolutely want to leave time for questions. And I think the couple presentations that I did virtually, I gave about 5 or no more than 10 minutes of question time. But be ready for questions, expect them, don't be intimidated by them. People should have questions because you're doing a brief summary and you're leaving out a lot of the details, but you can fill them in depending on what they want to know. Show your excitement for your poster. If you're not excited, why would they be? It's much less likely that they would be excited if you're not. So that's just another presentation tip. So I did a virtual presentation for both my posters. One of the student organizations was in person, but the same kind of thing applies, as you're doing a presentation. Try not to read off the virtual poster, and then with your mouse, your cursor, you can point to the figures or whatever section you're on if you want to highlight, I'm in now the methods, and kind of move your mouse around. Stare at the tiny camera at the top as much as possible, kind of like I talked with the interviews, virtual interview experience that I had. Get used to that, same thing. And then, of course, when you're doing virtual presentations, you might have questions in the chat or comments in the chat. So make sure that you are viewing that, maybe periodically, maybe after you do the backgrounds and methods, you take a pause, check the chat, or ask for questions. That's also something in general you should kind of do halfway and just pause for any questions, because typically it just helps people be more engaged. Instead of keeping a question in the back of their mind, you give them time to release it so that they can stay focused. And then the in-person presentation part, kind of already talked about. I did that with a student organization poster, and mainly I was just talking about the organization, and that it was mainly a poster of pictures, but same tips apply. I think that, hopefully as COVID maybe improves, we can have more actual poster presentations, but my experience was within COVID, so it was all virtual. But there's also other nuances with actually doing in-person presentations of a poster. You have to worry about printing it, which I haven't had to do. You have to worry about taking it on your plane and having that big poster not being, wrinkled or whatever. So those are all interesting things to think about if you're doing in-person presentation. Don't forget. And I don't know if you have to even check it on like a bag if you go on a plane, but those are some things to think about that virtual presentations doesn't make you think about. So that's kind of an overview. Hopefully it was helpful. If you like the video, just go ahead and give it a thumbs up, please, and then put in the comments any questions or tips that you would have me, or things that you want me to talk about on this channel, and share the video with someone who you think it could be helpful for. But otherwise, I will see you guys next week.